Huh? It seems like we're missing a seat. There was only one empty seat at the table in the private room of the restaurant. Today was my niece's second birthday. We're having a birthday party for the whole family. My sister-in-law had invited me. The table was already occupied by my parents-in-law, my sister-in-law and her husband. And of course, the guest of honor, my niece. But there was only one empty seat. We only prepared seats and meals for the family. If you really want to join, you should bring your own lunch, of course. But there's no place to sit. Though, but, you said we should come together. Yes, I wanted to make it clear in front of everyone. I don't want to see the face of someone who's destroying our family anymore. Greg, you should divorce her as soon as possible. I couldn't hide my surprise. I never expected her to blatantly say, get a divorce. And to use the child's birthday party to involve the whole family. The supposed star of the day, my niece, looked on with a worried expression amidst the adults' commotion. This was supposed to be a happy occasion. Let's go home.
Yeah.
We decided to leave quietly after handing over the present, not wanting to cause any more distress for my niece. Then my sister-in-law laughed and spoke to her husband. Hey, Greg. You should celebrate with us. You're not a child, after all. Rachel will go home by herself. Did she really think my husband would never oppose her? He glanced at my sister-in-law and started walking away, silently putting his arm around my shoulder. However, just after this, another person would get up from their seat. And a tragedy would soon befall my sister-in-law and her husband. My name is Rachel Cohen, I'm 30 years old. I work as a freelance graphic designer. My husband, Greg, was a classmate from vocational school. After graduation, he worked as a designer at an advertising company. And I got a job at a company that makes graphics for games. We started dating after graduation when I began to share my work troubles with him. To me, my husband is a colleague in the creative field, a confidant, and a reliable partner. I decided to go freelance when we got married because I was anxious about continuing my busy job while managing household chores. With just the two of us, my income should be enough. Why don't you take the plunge and try? Really? Then I'll give it a shot, and if it's too hard, I'll look for another job right away. You'll be fine, Rachel. You were always the best in our class at vocational school. His praise was the final push I needed. But still, the first year was really tough. Managing schedules and dealing with administrative work I had never done before often left me on the verge of panic. But my husband was always there to support me. By the second year, I had finally figured out my own way of working. And work started to go smoothly. I felt blessed to have such a supportive husband and a successful career. However, not everything in my married life was smooth sailing. The problem was my in-laws. From the first time I met the mother-in-law and pregnant sister-in-law, I felt disliked. They clearly did not welcome me at the front door. What? Greg, you're marrying her? Can she even have kids? My sister-in-law and mother-in-law would frown whenever they saw me standing next to Greg, who is 5.9 feet. My height of 5 feet probably made me look even smaller. But it was rude to say so at our first meeting. Mom. That's rude. My husband got angry on my behalf, so all I could do was give a wry smile. But what my sister-in-law Allison said was even worse. Is this girl the root of all evil? You've been acting all high and mighty lately because of her influence, right? Really annoying. I was disheartened to hear such things right upon arriving. It was clear that the lack of confidence my husband had was influenced by these two. Even though his work was excellent since his student days, he could not accept compliments and often spoke poorly of himself. When we entered the house, there were the father-in-law and my sister-in-law's husband, Justin, waiting in the living room. "It's great to see you. Greg has always been well taken care of by you. We're truly delighted to have such a lovely woman join our family as a bride." I finally felt at ease, and welcomed with a smile. "Nice to meet you, I'm Justin Walters. I'll be Greg's brother-in-law. We're expecting a child soon, so we hope to have a close-knit family relationship." Justin was so kind, it made me wonder why he married Allison. He seemed a bit like my husband. "Hey, Mom. Why haven't you served coffee yet?" "Oh, my." I got so carried away with happiness. "Please, Rachel, have a seat here." In front of the father-in-law, their previously cold demeanor turned warm. His craftsman-like nature gave him an authoritative presence in the family, making it difficult for the mother-in-law and Allison to oppose him. He was still actively working in his own business at over 60 years old. Because of my father-in-law, I continued to engage with my husband's family. Otherwise, I might have cut ties with the mother-in-law and Allison long ago. After we started talking about marriage, my husband shared stories about his family. The father-in-law ran his own business, and the mother-in-law was a homemaker. Initially, they both worked, but the mother-in-law couldn't grasp the clerical work. So he left the household duties entirely to her. Allison was always the smart one, which made Mom cling to her from the start. The mother-in-law must have felt lonely being at home by herself, becoming overly dependent on Allison, who was indeed a beauty but with a difficult personality. I wasn't neglected or abused, but growing up being compared to her, I ended up with a lot of complexes. He chuckled, but there was a hint of sadness. "Huh? What about your father?" "Dad was mostly away for work." Allison was 5 years older, so I couldn't stand up to her, and Mom always took her side. That dynamic still seems to persist at home. It seemed the family home wasn't a pleasant place for my husband. With the father-in-law absent, Allison held the power, and my husband couldn't say no to her even as an adult. It wouldn't have been strange to say he was being brainwashed. That's wrong. Greg is talented and recognized for his work. You're an adult now, it's okay to say no if you dislike something. Hearing about my husband's past filled me with anger every time. Whenever he put himself down, I'd reassure him. "Greg, you're doing great. I really admire you." Whether it made a difference or not, his behavior gradually changed. Yet, we tried to keep our distance from his family, but Allison, wanting to manipulate him, never ceased to contact us. After getting married, my husband's financial generosity tightened. But I knew Allison still managed to wheedle money out of him. Not that my husband could fully refuse Allison's demands yet. The year we married, Allison and her husband welcomed a baby. Close to her due date, she called my husband. "Hey, Greg. For the baby shower, can you buy us a car seat and a stroller? I'll send you the product images later, thanks." She naturally asked for expensive, branded items. Shocked by the prices, we decided to gift a decent present plus $1,000 in cash instead. "What? Didn't you see the pictures I sent? This isn't nearly enough. You can get good quality strollers and car seats for $1,000. If you want something more expensive, you should cover the difference yourself." "Huh?" I asked Greg for it. "What do you mean by only giving $1,000 for your only sister's baby shower gift?" Later, after checking the gift, Allison summoned us. She probably expected my husband to comply as usual. "Sorry, sis. I'm not alone anymore." Instead of blaming my husband, Allison glared at me. Ever since he started dating me, he wasn't as easily swayed by her. Hence, she labeled me the root of all evil during our introduction. The niece was absolutely adorable. Besides cash gifts for her baptism, we also sent cute clothes and plush toys. Of course, that didn't satisfy Allison. When our work started going well, we moved into a slightly larger apartment. Until then, we lived in the apartment I had rented as a single. After moving, Allison and the mother-in-law showed up unannounced on a weekday. Perhaps, since my husband wasn't easily manipulated anymore, they shifted their target to harassing me. Why did you two get a 3-room for just yourselves? Isn't that a bit extravagant? Rachel, you're not making unreasonable demands of Greg, are you? He's too kind. I wanted to retort that Allison was the one taking advantage of his kindness, but kept silent. Greg also mentioned wanting to go independent eventually. So we wanted a place where we could each have a workspace. Even so, they exchanged cold glances. Their scrutinizing of our home made me uncomfortable. But I refrained from voicing my displeasure. Are you keeping the house clean, Rachel? It seems a bit dusty. Greg comes home tired from work. If you're home, you should keep the house in order. Oh, I'll keep that in my mind, though I do try to clean in between work. Oh, you're some kind of designer, right? I saw your computer screen. And it just looked like you were playing around. Can you even make pocket money with that? They couldn't grasp what my job entailed, seeing it merely as a way to earn some extra cash like a housewife's allowance. Indeed, from their perspective, my work on the computer might seem like mere play. Well, yes, I do manage to earn a bit more than just pocket money. Really? Then you should treat us sometime. Taking care of your husband's family is also a wife's duty, you know. Yes, please get along with Allison, dear. I couldn't help but give a wry smile. Why should earning a little mean I have to treat my sister-in-law? Their presence meant I couldn't work, just adding to my exhaustion. Later, I had my husband agree to stop their unannounced visits. But Allison's invitations were relentless, forcing us to host them several times a month. I never thought I'd see the day I'd understand my husband's inability to refuse them. Reflecting on it, Allison probably disliked that we, a childless couple, lived in a spacious apartment. Rachel, you know, we've decided to buy an apartment. A year after we moved, conspicuously, Allison and her husband purchased a condominium larger than ours. It must have been an expensive property because Allison started working part-time at a supermarket checkout, leaving her daughter with the grandmother. Thankfully, this meant fewer visits to our place, bringing peace to our home. The request from the father-in-law came a little after we moved. Since getting married, we had developed a good relationship, often discussing business since he ran his own. Greg, Rachel, I'm sorry to ask, but could you lend us some money? It was the first time the father-in-law had asked for such a favor. After hearing him out, we agreed to send a fixed amount monthly for a limited time. Greg insisted on handling it himself, but his income alone wasn't enough. Then, I'll contribute that portion. Greg, you're the breadwinner, so make sure our household stays stable. Greg looked surprised, then agreed, slightly blushing as he rubbed his nose. But, Father, please understand that if my job goes away, we can't continue the support. I understand. I'm truly sorry. Thank you. Seeing the father-in-law repeatedly thanking us made me feel like I was finally able to contribute to my husband's family. 2 years later, we discovered I was pregnant. Maybe it's time we had a child, we'd been saying, so Greg cried with joy at the positive test. Rachel, thank you. I promise to be the best dad. Really? Even over your sister? No. I won't give any more financial support to my sister. That's a promise. Laughing at Greg holding up the pregnancy test, we hugged and cried together. It was a declaration of independence from being dominated by his sister. Discussing when to tell his family about the pregnancy, we got a call from Allison. Next week, we're celebrating my child's birthday at a restaurant. Come join us, both of you. She's turning 2 already? We'll definitely be there. Greg, now expecting his own child, seemed to cherish his niece even more. On the day of the birthday party, arriving at the designated restaurant, we were led to a private room where Allison, her husband, Justin Walters, and the grandparents were already seated. Sorry we're late. Happy birthday, niece. Huh? Seems like there's one seat short? There was clearly only one seat available. And the table settings were prepared for one less than the number of guests. Yes, we didn't prepare a seat for Rachel. We can't associate with someone who upsets my wife. What is he talking about? Facing my confusion, Justin continued. What right do you have to try and divide my wife and Greg? Since you married, it's been harder to contact Greg, my wife tells me. I began to understand Allison's motive. She had likely been feeding Justin a skewed narrative to create a situation favorable to her. Allison smirked triumphantly when our eyes met. We only prepared seats and meals for the family. If you really want to join, you might as well bring your own lunch. There's nowhere to sit, though. But, we were invited to come together. And yes, I wanted to say this in front of everyone. I don't want to see the face of someone who's destroying our family. Greg, you should divorce her soon. I couldn't hide my surprise. I thought she wanted to separate me and my husband. But I never imagined she would outright say, get a divorce. Greg, it seems you've been under Rachel's thumb, haven't you? Working hard and yet you have no freedom with money. Since finding out about my pregnancy, Greg had started to firmly refuse Allison's demands for money. It's clear she had labeled me a complete nuisance. But to use a child's birthday party to involve the entire family. Greg, silent next to me, pulled me closer in a protective gesture. The niece, today's supposed star, looked on uneasily at the adults' exchange. Despite the supposed celebration, I felt a surge of anger and sadness, nearly bringing me to tears. Let's go home.
Yeah.
As we decided to leave quietly without causing further distress to the niece. Handing over only our gift, Allison called out to Greg with a laugh. Hey, Greg. You celebrate with us. You're not a child, Rachel can go home alone. She must think her brother would never defy her. Greg, after giving Allison a glance, started walking away with me, arm around my shoulder. Then, we heard the sound of a chair moving. I'll be leaving too. As he stood up, he patted the niece's head as if to say sorry. Allison seemed taken aback by her father's unexpected action. What? Dad, what's wrong? I explained about Rachel before you two arrived. She's a plague, you know. The father-in-law sighed deeply, disappointed. If you seriously believe that, you're truly foolish. The money your mother sends you comes from Rachel's assistance. What? What are you talking about? That can't be right. Today is about celebrating the granddaughter's birthday. It's ridiculous for you to leave. She desperately grabbed his arm. Father, what do you mean by Allison receiving money? Justin interjected, seeking clarification from the father-in-law. Despite working part-time 5 days a week. You claimed life was tough after buying the condo. I want to know what's going on. What? Allison said that? Why would she do something like that? Justin looked perplexed at Allison, who suddenly became silent, realizing something was amiss. Father-in-law, looking down at the mother-in-law gripping his arm, spoke with a fit of quiet anger. You'll need to stay with Allison for a while. We'll gather again later for a detailed discussion. Sorry, but please celebrate the granddaughter's birthday without me today. After leaving money on the table, the father-in-law quickly exited, with us following behind. Outside, he turned to us. I'm sorry about Allison. I wanted to understand her motives by staying quiet. I never expected her to demand a divorce. Dad, Rachel, I'm sorry. If I had been stronger. I gently patted Greg's back, reassuring him it wasn't his fault. Then, the three of us went to eat, sharing with the father-in-law about the relationship with Allison and everything that had happened. Greg, I'm sorry. As a father, I failed to notice. I was too absorbed in work and neglected parenting. Seeing the father-in-law and Greg crying, I felt Greg's heart was finally being healed. And when we shared the news of my pregnancy, he was genuinely happy. Actually, I've been thinking about something too. The story told by the father-in-law was shocking. He mentioned setting up a final meeting as soon as preparations were complete. And then we disbanded for the day. When we got home, Greg received a message from Allison. I haven't received the birthday celebration money yet. Since we couldn't cancel the meal, you need to add that to what you transfer. Seeing the message drained me, but Greg energetically replied to his phone screen. Like I'd send you anything. Idiot. It was clear he had finally moved on, and I felt proud of him. 2 weeks later, the father-in-law contacted us. And we were to visit Allison and her husband's condo. Their daughter was being looked after by a neighbor's mom friend. As soon as everyone gathered, the mother-in-law started questioning. So, what's this about Rachel's assistance? The father-in-law shared that work had decreased over the years. And he couldn't take on as much due to his physical condition. He had loans from financial institutions and had struggled to cover living expenses, which led him to ask for our help. You said we absolutely couldn't cut back on living expenses. But part of that was being sent to Allison. I trusted you to manage our finances, and I'm very disappointed. What? I thought about dipping into our savings for retirement to finish off the repayments. But then I found out you'd used it for Allison's condo down payment. The mother-in-law turned pale. The father-in-law had fully trusted her management as there had never been issues before. Indeed, there had been savings for retirement. But Allison insisted on buying the condo. So the mother-in-law used the savings without telling her husband. Because of that, we're broke. I had asked Greg and Rachel for help with our living expenses, not knowing it included a monthly allowance of $800 to Allison. I didn't realize things were that bad. How old do you think I am? I won't be able to work forever, you know? The mother-in-law had gotten used to seeing deposits in their account, probably taking it for granted, not realizing it was due to the father-in-law's hard work, not a gift from the heavens. Confronted with reality, the mother-in-law started trembling. I can't live with you anymore. I can't forgive you for favoring Allison over Greg and deciding to sell the house. Prepare yourself, you have no home to return to. Selling the house. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. Please forgive me. What will I do without you? You've always cared for Allison, right? Then from now on, rely on her. We'll discuss the future later. The mother-in-law began to apologize profusely, but the father-in-law silently shrugged off her clinging hands. Once the discussion with the father-in-law and mother-in-law settled, Justin quietly spoke up. Allison, what's this about the allowance? Allison twitched at his question. You said you wanted to work, right? You told me it was just a part-time job twice a week, didn't you? Now it was Allison's turn to pale. The mother-in-law, who had been crying, looked up to respond. What? It's 5 days a week. I've been looking after our granddaughter while you're at work. Because you said Justin's income wasn't enough and that we needed to send allowances. Shut up. Mom, just stay quiet. What are you saying? You're the one who lied about the allowance. If you hadn't lied, none of this would have happened. The mother, who had always acquiesced to everything Allison wanted, was now confronting her. Shut up. It's your fault Justin is upset. Take it back. If we get divorced, it's your fault. Quiet, you big liar. Their argument escalated into a shouting and grappling match, which Justin and the father-in-law had to break up. Justin forcefully seated and agitated Allison and laid out several photographs on the table. Allison gasped and widened her eyes in shock. After hearing from the father-in-law and feeling suspicious, I spent the last 2 weeks investigating you. I expected some wasteful spending, but I never imagined you were cheating too. Everyone gasped and leaned in to see the photos showing Allison clinging to another man. No, you've got it wrong. This is a misunderstanding. It seemed her part-time earnings, the money from her mother, and the allowance from my husband were all spent on shopping sprees and outings with her affair partner, who was an unemployed high school classmate she had reconnected with a year ago. No wonder there was never enough money. We're getting divorced. I'll take custody of our daughter. If you want to see her, you'll have to come to my parents' place. His family lived a 2-hour flight away, making frequent visits difficult without genuine effort. Justin was prepared to quit his job and move back home. No. I won't divorce. We just bought our condo. It was just a momentary lapse. Please, forgive me. We're a family, aren't we? No way. You destroyed our family yourself. You're a stranger to me now, better off divorced. You said it yourself. Allison's words at the birthday party resurfaced. She began to scream like a child whose demands were not met, her face turning bright red. What's going on? Why isn't everything going my way? Why? Why won't anyone listen to me? Her behavior, banging on the table and crying out, was eerily reminiscent of a small child, sending chills down my spine. The discussion was clearly over. As the father-in-law and we stood to leave, the mother-in-law and Allison hesitantly looked up. I felt compelled to say one last thing. I'm pregnant. Since the father-in-law is considering divorce, we will stop the $3,000 assistance next month. That's fine. I've got it figured out. What? Pregnant? $3,000? Allison, who had been crying just moments before, stood up with a hysterical voice. Despite what you think, Rachel earns $5,000 a month as a graphic designer. What? Why only you? I won't forgive this. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. You owe me compensation. Allison charged at me with a wild expression, emitting a bizarre scream. My husband, standing beside me, stepped in front of me, grabbed Allison's arm as she lunged, and forcefully pushed her aside. Carried by her momentum, Allison crashed into the wall and fell to the ground. Don't you dare lay a hand on my family. I will never be under your control again. Stay away from us. I believe those words from my husband were the ultimate retribution to Allison. Opening the door to the silent apartment, we finally stepped out of the world dominated by Allison. Afterward, the in-laws began considering separation with divorce in mind. By selling the family home, the father-in-law was able to pay off his debts and now resides in his office, finding solace in their separation. The mother-in-law was provided with an old apartment, where she receives a small allowance plus rent. Recently, she started working as a cleaning staff at a condominium, surely feeling the weight of her situation. Allison's marriage quickly ended in divorce. The condo, despite her mother's efforts, had to be sold due to Allison's inability to afford the mortgage. Justin gained custody of their daughter and moved back to the countryside, expressing his apologies to me. Left without options, Allison moved in with her mother, juggling multiple part-time jobs to pay compensation and child support, a situation that seemed to strain their relationship further. As my due date approaches, Greg and I are considering buying a home and possibly living with the father-in-law after the baby's birth, with plans for Greg to start his own business next year. We look forward to collaborating on work, household duties, and parenting.